There we go. Welcome again. And the recording is placed on our webpage, which is tax.illinois.gov. And you can go back and listen not only to this presentation again, you can also listen to other previous recorded webinars that we've done. So with that in mind, let's go over a few housekeeping tips. We ask that you please be professional on this webinar. We are here to give help to help you learn more about how to apply for jobs with the state of Illinois, what kind of a resume you need to have for the state of Illinois application process, and also a little bit about the interviewing process. We'll talk briefly about revenue as an agency and why it's so great to work here, and about some of the jobs that we hire for often here at Revenue. And we ask that you not try to sell us anything or kind of troll the chat box. Otherwise, we're going to have to ask you to leave. We do have a full agenda, as I indicated. So with that in mind, and we want to allow time for you at the end to ask questions. So I'm going to share my screen and the presentation. It's thinking about it. It's late in the day and I think my computer is a little tired, so it's still spinning, so bear with me. And let me move this over to the right screen. Let's see if this will work. I'm going to assume that that popped up. If it did not with PowerPoint, can someone let me know?
Do not see the PowerPoint, Julie.
I don't know what's happening with this because it is right there. Hold on, let me try this again.
Oh,
Something's happening.
yeah.
Yes?
There we go.
There we go. Great. Thank you for your patience. First slide is a basic disclaimer. I'm not an attorney and I'm not here to give you any kind of tax advice. We're simply talking about jobs this evening. Next is the history of IDOR. So the Department of Revenue has been around since the 1920s. We were put into place by legislation to process the motor fuel tax, one tax way back in the 20s. And since then, we have grown to 1,300 employees. We process 13 million tax returns and 67.5 billion in deposits. The photo that you see on the screen is our main headquarters in Springfield, Illinois. That's where I'm sitting in this evening. So we also have other locations we're going to get to. But first, let's talk briefly about the mission of IDOR. It's really simple. We are required to ensure that all tax revenues are efficiently collected and properly deposited and then processed. We work closely with the Comptroller's Office to make sure the tax refunds get back to the people that need those dollars, and then to make sure the state payments are made in a timely manner. As I mentioned, we have over 1,300 employees. The majority of them are in Springfield, Illinois at the Willard Ice building. We strongly value diversity, both culturally and professionally, and we believe that by doing so, it fosters a more productive work environment, and that best suits the citizens of Illinois and you as a taxpayer. So something that we are very feel strongly about. Now, the big areas in revenue are what we call program areas, and there are several that are that all deal with taxpayers. So taxpayer services are kind of like the customer service area. Account processing gets the tax returns in and then divides them all up and sends them where they need to go. Collections is just that. If you owe us money and maybe forget to pay us, we'll send you a nice letter and a nudge to say, hey, let's set up a payment plan. The audit does just that. We audit individuals and businesses, and our legal service team handles a variety of tax, both with taxpayers, businesses, etc. And then we have a criminal investigation unit here as well. And sometimes they have to deal with people that aren't paying taxes the way they should. We also have other areas here like Brent, Millie, myself are in HR. We have internal affairs, we have communication, admin services. The previous slide are those areas that deal primarily with taxpayers. Now, earlier I showed you Springfield, the Willard Ice Building. We do have other locations. The most important thing on this screen is the last item, which talks about remote work. We get that on every single phone call. The answer is that really none of our positions are remote. Some of our positions can be performed at home, and it really depends on what the nature of the job is. So if you think about it, we deal with taxes, highly confidential information, salaries, deductions, all of that stuff. You wouldn't want your information shared with my neighbors. So if I was sitting at home at my kitchen table processing your tax return, you would want to make sure that it was safe and the information was confidential. So there are just some positions that we have here that cannot be done at home. As long as the program area deems that it's okay and the person actually works well from home and the position can be done from home, then we can allow remote work. It really does truly just depend. Now, a couple of the positions that we hire for on a regular basis. The first is our revenue auditor trainee title. We hire large groups of individuals in these next couple of titles. And we call them large class hires. So it may be 20, 40, 60 people at a time. You come in as a group, you get your training on the job and in the classroom, just like school. And these titles, this particular job is in our audit area. It is part of the union. It does require a bachelor's degree, and it also requires some progressive accounting work as well. The next title is the revenue tax specialist. And this is probably the largest title at Revenue. We have about 325 of those 1,300 employees in this title alone. And all of those tax areas, program areas, so taxpayer services, account processing, collection, and audit all have this title in their area. And there's a variety of work that these individuals do in this title. So you might be on the phone with taxpayers, you might be corresponding with them on email, you might be doing some research on tax refunds or questions. So there's a lot of information to learn. And again, we give you all the training on the job and in the classroom that you need. You don't have to come in with any experience whatsoever. Now, the slide says requires a BA. It does not. You can have the equivalent right now, but that information will be in the minimum qualifications on the job posting, which we'll talk about a little bit later on this evening. It too is a union position. And this title, along with that previous title of the revenue auditor trainee, right now do not require interviews. So you simply apply for the job as long as you meet the minimum qualifications. And depending on the number of people that applied for the position, you could simply get a call from Millie with a job offer and discuss the next steps. Now, the next two slides are from our legal services area. They are titles that we frequently hire for. And there's two things I want to make sure that we point out here. This title is Technical Advisor Advanced Program Specialist, or what we call TAPS. And to me, there's no way in that title that you would think that this position is an attorney. You have to have a law degree and you work in legal services. But the title is a little misleading. And that's why I encourage you on the job posting boards, even if you see a title that doesn't sound like anything you'd be interested, make sure you click on it and read what the essential duties are, because it could be something that you do meet the minimum qualifications on and you would be eligible to apply for. The second position is the technical advisor 2, and it also is in legal services. It is, it could be working with the Board of Appeals and then does legal and administrative, or works with the legal and administrative law judges. It does require a law degree. And a lot of times at Revenue, we get candidates that are seeking a second career. So maybe fresh out of college, you want to go work for a big four firm, or if you're a law school graduate, you want to go work for a major firm. And you do that for 10, 15 years, and then you decide that you want something with a little bit of a slower pace, not 90 hours a week. And so a lot of the employees that come to Revenue are seeking that second career, and that we constantly are looking for these two attorney positions. So if you wouldn't mind, share with your friends and family if they're interested, and let them know when those jobs post, that we would love to have them apply. Now we're going to transition a little into the statewide benefit package. There's a couple things in here that are specific to Revenue, but for the most part, all of the items on this particular slide apply across the state. We generally work a 37.5-hour work week. Now, tonight, Millie, Brent, and I are working a little bit of overtime tonight. Saturday morning, we'll work a little bit of overtime. There are pockets when that happens, but generally, it's a 37.5-hour work week. Monday through Friday, you have your evenings and your weekends to pursue hobbies, families, travels, school, whatever you want to do. We have a very generous paid time off package. So in your first year, you get 10 paid vacation days and up to 25 annually days off you get. So it's very generous. For me, I think one of the best things the state's done is implemented a parental leave program where mothers and fathers can take up to 12 weeks off a year. I believe it's a year, to have a baby. So I think that is fabulous. Now on this slide, the one key takeaway I want you to remember is that health, vision, dental insurance start day one. You do not have to wait. There's no 3-month, 6-month waiting period for your benefits. They kick in automatically. And then the other benefits on the slide are eligible for employees as well. Under the financial wellness slide, couple of things. The state of Illinois is a employer that you can qualify for the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. And interestingly, the recruiting trend right now with young adults is they want to work for a place that has a pension. Their parents either are still working because they don't have a pension, or their parents have retired with a pension, and they want to make sure that they land someplace that has that investment vehicle for them. And the state of Illinois offers Tier 1 and Tier 2 pension program, and we also offer the deferred compensation plan where you can put additional funds away for long-term savings. The key takeaway on this slide is that tuition reimbursement second bullet, up to $5,000 annually, that IDOR allows employees to utilize for tuition reimbursement, and not every state agency has that. So we're very fortunate. That's one of the best benefits that we have at Revenue. Now, the next slide is on professional development. And again, this is something that we are super proud of. So many of our senior leaders that work at Revenue right now started out in those trainee titles that we talked about earlier, the revenue auditor trainee and the revenue tax specialist trainees, and they have advanced up over their career. Millie on the call with us tonight is an excellent example. She started as a trainee. She utilized that tuition reimbursement program that we have, went back to school, and has been promoted into her title now as a human resource specialist. So we have about 46% of our current leadership started in the trainee title and worked their way up. And we have a substantial amount of people of color and females on our senior leadership team. So that's something that we're very proud of. The next slide talks about additional benefits. These are available for all state of Illinois employees. If you need pet insurance or auto and home insurance, you can get a discounted price. You do pay the premiums yourself for these, but they are available as a state employee. Now let's transition a little and talk about where to go to find the jobs with the state. So the website used to be either Work for Illinois or Jobs at Illinois. They made it much easier, and now it is careers.illinois.gov. You can still get there using the old way, but this is much easier to remember and easier to say. This is the main state page. So if you want to look at all agencies and see what jobs are available, you would type in career.illinois.gov and you'd land here. And then the very end button talks about state jobs that are available. And as a non-state employee, you would pick external, and then it takes you to that job board. You can winnow down on this page to look at jobs by agency, job titles, particular areas of interest. So if you're interested in accounting or human resources or working with people with disabilities, you can type that in the search bar and it'll bring up those agencies with jobs open. Now, to get to our page, it is tax.illinois.gov, and this is the main landing page for revenue. And again, you can get to our job postings on the main state page. It's easier, I think, to just go to our page. At the very top right-hand corner in that yellow circle, there is a button for employment. And once you click on that, it's going to take you to a page that looks like this. And there's 4 sections on here. There are some great resources on our webpage that I would encourage you to go out and explore. The first one is some information about revenue, kind of what we do, what we talked about tonight. The second button is the job postings. The third is a sheet of titles that we frequently hire for, and it gives a little bit of information about the job and then the minimum requirements for those jobs. And then last, there's a button on how to apply, and that's one of those areas where there's some great resources. So if you don't or haven't already applied for a job with the state of Illinois, I would encourage you to look at the data in that button, that section, and become familiar with it. We're going to go over some of it tonight, but not in full detail. So if you click on that button about job postings, you'll get a page that looks similar to this. Now, this was Tuesday's page. Yesterday, we only had 2 jobs posted. Today, sadly, I did not have time to go out and look to see how many are there today. But every day, this page could change. If by chance you clicked on job postings and it was blank, it just means we don't have any jobs that are posted right now. That happens very infrequently, but it can. The key on the job postings is they are posted for 10 days and you have to apply for the job when it is posted. And when you click on one of these particular jobs, it will take you to the details of the job. So the top section is going to look the same for all of our jobs. We're going to tell you a rec number. We're going to tell you the closing date. That's a key takeaway for tonight's call. Make sure that you look at what that closing date and time is. Because if I decide I'm interested in this job and on May 10th, I come out and try to apply for it, the posting will be gone and I'm not able to apply for the job after the closing date. So you want to make sure that you pay attention to that date and time if it's on there. It tells you the title, it tells you the location, and it tells you the salary. And let's talk about that for a minute because we always get questions on, can we negotiate the salary? Our union jobs the salary structures are negotiated with the union. So there's not as much give in those jobs. If you are coming in off the street, we give you the range. And if you look on this particular posting, this in salary is $54.64. And I am very confident and think I am going to ask for that full amount. I'm making $6,000 a month now, so I'm going to ask for the $54.64. I'm sorry to say that it does not work that way. That is the end of the scale. It means that you're going to start close to that 4,096. Now, if you have additional education and experience, that number may go up a little, but it will definitely not go up to the end number. And the reason is because it gives you steps in that salary range to grow and as you advance. And in those titles we talked about earlier, the trainee titles, every time you complete a portion of that training, you get a step increase. So you move from step 2 to step 3, and then you complete a portion and you go from step 3 to step 4. Also on this section is the county where the job is located. Make sure you pay attention to that. Please do not assume that if it's in Sangamon and you are in Cook County and you apply for the job that you can work remote. So you want to pay particular attention to the location and also the number of vacancies. And then the bargaining unit code, that RCO 62, means this is an AFSCME job. If there's a number in that area, usually means it's a union position. Now, the details on the job, this is the most critical part, or I would say one of two of the most critical parts on the job posting. You want to pay attention to the essential functions of the job. This tells you what you will be doing every day. You're going to look for keywords, words that are repeated often. That's going to tell you potentially a question in the application that you're going to fill out, or it could come up in the interview later. You want to look at the minimum qualifications. What those, in this case, 2 bullets, those are the minimum that you have to apply for this position. Now, on some of our jobs, there may also be preferred qualifications. And what that means is that if we have 100 people that meet the min qual, how do we winnow that list down? And to do that, we ask those preferred the preferred quals are listed there, and we ask you some additional questions about that, and you get points on your preferred qualifications. So it might say in a human resource job posting, do you have experience in interviewing or conducting workshops? And I would say yes. And then it says, do you have a certification? And if I say yes, I'm going to get extra points for that. Somebody else may not have it, but that would be under the preferred qual. The bottom area is on conditions of employment, and 2 key important things here are we do tax compliance checks on all of our employees. That means if you are not in compliance with your taxes for the state of Illinois, you have the option to get into compliance, so we can set up a repayment plan for you. The second part is on a fingerprint background check. We have a daycare here in our Springfield location, and all of our employees have to be fingerprinted and that background check done. Now, even if you're applying for a job in St. Clair County or up in Rockford, you still have to go through that process because you could be in this building for a meeting or training or something. So we have to make sure that everybody complies with that. Now, the final details on the job posting, there'll be a contact name in there. It'll tell you the hours of the job and the location of the job. And then you see that apply button in the bottom corner. So once you hit that apply button, it takes you, if you have not already set up an account, it would take you to a page where you would need to create one. And it would look, well, let me pause a minute. I'm getting too excited. Before we leave the job posting, a recap. So you want to print and save the job posting. The reason is, remember, it only is up for 10 days, and it could take 4 to 12 to 16 weeks before you hear something about a job. And if I call you and say, hey, are you interested in this interview? Or I'm calling you to make you a job offer, and you think, I don't even remember what I applied for. So you want to make sure you save the job posting. It will also, as I said before, have that contact name in there. So if you haven't heard in 4 months what your status is, you could reach out to Brent and say, hey, can you give me an update on that job I applied for back in January? You want to make sure you read the job posting again and study for keywords. If you do get an interview for a position, you want to study that job posting because it's going to give you some ideas on what types of questions they could be asking. And then again, pay attention to the section labeled requirements and qualifications. If there's a weight requirement, you need to be able to lift 40 pounds because you're moving tax returns from one shelf to the other. You have to make sure that you can comply with those requirements in the job posting. Now, let's transition, second time tonight, over to getting started. So setting up an account. It's very, very basic. Your name, an email, a phone number. You are allowed or encouraged to post your college transcripts if you have those, and upload them onto your account. If you do that, you'll see a section like this that says upload your documents, and you can attach those. And then you get into the questions. And I know this is small, you don't have to worry about reading it, but I want you to look at the kind of the flow of the questions. So number 1, ask a question. Basically, do you have a college degree, yes or no? And then if you mark yes, then you put your answer in there that explains I have a degree in a master's in business administration. I got it from Benedictine University in 2016. I had coursework in marketing and econ and accounting and strategy and project management. So you put all the details in that second box. What you want to make sure you do is have the information on your resume and your application match. So this is an example of, do you have a certificate for DEIA? And the person marked yes. And then you can see in the bottom where it's on the resume, it would be under certificates. And it says, yes, I have a DEIA certificate from Cornell University that I got in 2020. So it's important that how you fill out your application when you apply matches what your resume is that you attach. Again, be very specific with your titles and your duties. So if I'm the HR recruitment manager and I do these 10 duties and I list that in my job application, then I want to make sure that that same information is available on my resume. Now, I said earlier, be very detailed when you answer those questions. Please do not answer any of those questions with "See resume attached." That will get you knocked out of the running because we do not use ATS applicant tracking system with the state of Illinois. So it's an actual human being looking and reviewing and evaluating your answers when you apply, and possibly a subject matter expert reviewing your resume when you apply. So you want to make sure that you answer those questions in full detail and they match. If you put "See resume" on any answer, you're most likely going to get tossed out. And earlier I mentioned some of our positions, like our trainee titles right now, do not have interviews. So you would, if you applied and you were selected, you would get a call with a job offer and more details on the job. The positions that do have interviews, you will get an email requesting you like self-serve and pick a date and time to talk to the team about the interview. Again, sometimes it can take 4 to 12 to 16 weeks, depending on the number of applicants we get. We're going to have a very large class hire coming up in the fall and potentially could have 40 to 60 openings. So when you imagine the high volume of applications that we get, it takes the team a little bit of time to go through all of those before we get done with the process. Now, one thing I would encourage you to do, this is a free service offered by the state of Illinois through Central Management Services, and it's career counseling. They not only can help you look at your resume and give you tips on your resume on some things you might want to enhance, but they can also recommend jobs that are across the state of Illinois. Millie, Britt, and I know all of the jobs. Well, we know a lot of the jobs here at Revenue, but we don't know jobs at other state agencies. And you might be interested in a position with IDOT or Department of Human Services. We don't know their job titles. So the career counselors can look at your resume and give you feedback on which positions with the state you would be the best candidate for. So I would highly encourage you to reach out to them. Now let's talk a little bit about the public service resume. So if you either get resources from CMS, career counseling, or you put together your resume on your own, that's great. At the state, it's very different. It is so different than the private sector. So if you heard in high school or college or your friend or your neighbor, everyone tells you in the private sector, you want a one-page resume if you've recently graduated from college and not work experience, and no more than 2 pages if you've been working for a while with only the last 10 years of service on there. You want to put bullets on there with your accomplishments, and you want it to be just a quick glance at what you've been doing in your career for the last 10 years. That is not the case with the state of Illinois resume. So here's Mythbuster number 4. Key takeaway: your resume with the state of Illinois should reflect all of the work experience and education that you have. So if I worked in high school in retail, I want to put that on my resume. If I worked jobs 25 years ago, I want to put that on my resume, and not just a date, a title, and a name of business. You want to spell out all the job duties. So sometimes it can take a little while to draft that public sector resume, but it is in your best interest to do it that way, because the more detail you have on there, the more credit that you get for the jobs that you're applying for. So even though if I applied for a job tomorrow that required salary and compensation, I'm not doing that job right now, but I have that experience from 15 years ago. So I want to make sure that that's on my resume and in detail so that I can get credit for it and that could be applied to the job that I'm applying for today. I hope that makes sense. No limit on the number of pages. It can be 15, 18, 20, 25 pages long. You want to write it so that the person reading it understands what you did. So don't use acronyms or jargon that's industry related. They're not going to understand. So you want to make sure that you write it very clear and explain thoroughly what you do. Again, if you have knowledge and experience, but you don't disclose it on your resume, the experience will not be added to the initial application grade. So you want to make sure that you put everything on there. Now, you receive a score and a rank based on the information you provide. The more detailed, the better. We are not able to contact you if there's missing information. So if you tell me in your application that you supervised in a previous role, and I go to your resume and it's nothing on your resume talks about supervision at all, I can't follow up with you and say, hey, Tom Jones, you mentioned this on the application, but it's not on your resume. Can you update it and resend that in? We're not allowed to do that. So when you put together your resume for the state, you want to kind of create your story, your journey that you've been on and your career, and make sure you put all the details in there. Now, as far as building your resume, we'll talk a little bit about each of these components. There's a couple items that you for sure want to make sure you have on here. Well, you want everything on here, but we'll break it down. So the first one is contact information. And there's a little bit of discrepancy during COVID. Everyone was moving and working remote, and maybe your job was in Utah and you bought a villa in Italy and you were working remote and it didn't matter. So at that point in time, people got to the point where they were only putting their name, email address, and a phone number on their resume. And that was okay. What it did, though, is it created problems for the recruiters because of time zones. So you want to make sure that you put a city and a state on there so that when the recruiter calls you, if you are living in that villa in Italy, you're 7 hours ahead, they're calling you at an appropriate time to make you a job offer or talk about your position. Using a professional summary, that really is your choice. In the private sector, it's very common. At the state of Illinois, it is not necessary. You can, you won't get any marks against you for having it on your resume, but it is not necessary. If you do it, what I strongly encourage you to do is make sure that it's very active and not just simply a nice fluff statement. So I'm a HR talent acquisition manager with 25 years and a team player who thinks outside the box to solve challenging problems at every company I've worked at. That tells that recruiter absolutely nothing about what I've done or what I'm seeking. So you want to make sure that you indicate your level of knowledge, your years of experience, any target title that you're trying to get. And again, a simple statement. So successful recruiters working in a variety of platforms, hired judges, physicians, and accountants. So just make sure that it is kind of specific if you do want to use it. Now let's talk a little bit about hard skills and soft skills. Those hard skills are technical knowledge, maybe some certificates or trainings that you might have accomplished. And you definitely want to make sure that you include that in your resume, either in the job duties that you've done or at the bottom under additional certifications. So these might be some type of language that you have acquired. It might be a database. You might be bilingual or be multilingual and have other languages that you can put on there. It might be a software language. So these are additional hard skill training that you worked really hard for, you want to make sure that they're on your resume. Now, on the soft skill, you've all seen sample resumes out there, either on LinkedIn or Facebook or TikTok, and you hear about these soft skills, and they're great. What I would encourage you to do is to be a little bit more specific. So again, anybody can put these words on a piece of paper and say, I'm a team player who's very creative at problem solving and critical thinking, and I can adapt using effective communication. That doesn't really tell the recruiter a whole lot. What I would encourage you to do is to make sure that any of those soft skills that you want to emphasize, you do it in your list of accomplishments and you do it with data. So I increased the number of attendees on my virtual webinars by 50%, or I stayed under budget for my recruiting events with registration and registration fees and swag. I saved money by changing a process that eliminated a 3-day wait period and saved the agency $50,000. So you want to make sure that you put that data in there as much as you can. Now, not everything that you did may have data associated with it, but if you're answering calls, tell us how many. If you're working on a team, tell us what you did. Were you a lead on the team? Did you manage those team members? Under your employment history, you want to make sure that you give as much information as you can. And the two that stick out here are what we just talked about, the emphasize your accomplishments. What did you do or what did you accomplish in your jobs? But also under exact month or year, it is best practice to say I worked at the Illinois Department of Revenue from December of 2020 through May of 2025. Now, I've asked you to put all your career history on there. Do I remember the exact dates when I started working at the mall when I was in high school? No, I know it was in summer. So I would want to make sure that I put summer of whatever year it was and put an asterisk there and indicate at the bottom of the resume, sorry, I don't remember the exact month that I started working at the clothing store at the mall, but it was sometime in midsummer or something to that effect. Now, a question will come up, no experience. Maybe you've just graduated from high school or college and you have very limited experience. You might have some, but you don't think it's applicable to the state of Illinois. And I'm going to show you a couple of examples of how you can make it applicable. So if you look at a couple of things that particularly high school, college students do, which is mowing the lawns and babysitting or maybe helping take care of a elderly parent or grandparent. Those are job skills that you've learned and earned, and you should be able to put those on your resume. Think about, instead of saying talking to my neighbors for feedback on my service, that's great, or started with one neighbor and now mow the whole block. Turn it into a little more actionable. So used customer service skills to build relationships and earn referrals. Grew my client base from 2 homes to 10 homes in 6 months. Provided home health, daily long-term care for a bed-bound client. You can utilize those skills. You can get credit on your application for those skills. And you can do that with just about any job that you've done. So please don't shortchange yourself and think it doesn't matter. It does. Now, under certificates, you want to make sure that if it is required for the job, that it is listed on the application and or your resume. Both would be best. Make sure that you put a date you obtained it, the organization you received it from, and if it is still current. Under education, we get a lot of questions about unofficial and official transcripts. What we don't want is for you to take a picture of your diploma and upload that. We need the at least the unofficial and or the official transcript that you have. Now, a question will come up on, what if I didn't finish college? Should I still put that on my resume and on the application? And yes, you should. You should explain that you have 32 of 60 credit hours towards a degree in accounting, and here's the courses that you completed already. And either you're still going to school or you didn't finish, but you want to make sure that you do put that on there. And then the other information as well, the name of the school, the location, the degree that you obtained, the field of study. Graduation year, it depends. If you just graduated, you're proud of it, put it on there. If it's been 20, 30, 40 years and you don't want to put it on there, I don't think it's necessary. Volunteer experience, you want to make sure that anything that you do volunteer wise, if it maps onto the job, you put it on that resume or the application in a question. So for example, if I volunteer at the Ronald McDonald House, I am scheduling other volunteers to come in and help cook. I'm creating a shopping list. I am determining the menu. I am scheduling those volunteers. I am managing a budget that we have to buy the groceries. I'm working with the families there, showing compassion, active listening skills. So there's a lot of things that you can utilize on your volunteer experience to put on your resume to show job skills. So make sure if you have them and they map on that you put those on there. The same with any achievements that you may have. If it's job-related awards, you won Employee of the Quarter, you won bonuses for sales, anything that maps on to the job, you want to make sure that you put on your resume under your achievement section. And under resume recap, so make sure there's no page limit, you avoid any type of acronyms. Please, please get into the nitty-gritty detail, put all those details on there. Make sure that if you upload your unofficial, official transcripts, that you check them and that they're there okay. You don't have to do it every single time. You might want to check it every third or fourth time you apply for a job and just make sure they're still okay. The same is for your resume. If you upload that resume, you want to make sure you go back and review the information in the system, the SuccessFactors system, because sometimes it can be wonky and leave out or put gaps or spaces in. You want to make sure that all your details transferred over. Please don't see resume as an answer on any of your questions, and make sure your resume and your applications match. So let's transition now for the final time tonight and talk about the interview. So this is Brent and Millie's area. They are the subject matter experts here. So I have a couple of talking points and I always ask them to weigh in and make sure I didn't forget anything or explain something better than I did. So the first thing is that you need to make sure you download the WebEx application. That's what we're using tonight. And the interview would actually be very similar to what we're doing tonight. So Brent would be the moderator and Millie and I would be panelists, and Brent will ask you the questions. Make sure you download that WebEx. Make sure you are giving yourself a private, quiet place to do the interviews. So put your kids, your dogs, your noisy neighbors, your construction people out front. Make sure that's all tucked away and that you're someplace quiet. Make sure you're confident on the call. You're looking at the screen, at the camera. You do need a camera on for the interview. If I haven't done very many of these on camera, the tendency is you want to look at yourself, and I'm not over here, I'm over here. So you want to make sure you practice looking at nothing, a screenshot, and be okay with that and be confident. You want to make sure you wear something nice, even if it's the waist up, a nice shirt, jacket, tie, look professional, but mostly and mainly, you want to make sure that you practice. So a lot of people will balk at that, and I'll explain in a little bit more in detail, but practicing really does help you. As I mentioned, there's three panel members on there. The moderator will ask the questions, put them in chat. They will tell you up front, we have 30 minutes or 60 minutes for the interview today, and they'll tell you the number of questions. We have 5 questions or we have 15 questions. So you need to make sure that you space yourself out so that you allow enough time to answer the questions, because any question you don't answer, you don't get credit for. Probably the most important thing is to make sure that you answer the question fully. So it might be what we call a double barrel question. Tell me about a time that you had an angry client and how did you handle the situation? And you might tell me in your answer about the angry client, but then you forget to tell me how I handled it. So you want to make sure that you listen very carefully to the question or read it carefully in the chat and you answer all the parts of the question. There might be 3 parts. You also want to make sure that you spell everything out and don't assume that the person on the panel has your resume in front of them. So going back to that earlier example, if we are talking about supervision and it says right on my resume that I supervised 19 people, and I assume you're reading that, so I don't mention it. And they ask about supervising, and your answer is, yeah, I've supervised, and that's your answer. You need to make sure that you explain it fully. Yes, I supervised 19 people. 10 of them were professional level positions, and 9 of them were clerical. I gave evaluations and coached and mentored and disciplined and terminated over the course of my supervisory career. So you want to make sure you explain everything. Last section, understand the interview does not have the resume. We just talked about that. Sorry. All scores are given based on the answers. Utilize your time. The interview panel will be scoring you while you're giving your answer. So again, make sure that you answer all the parts of the question. But here's how this works. They'll ask the question, tell us about your supervisory experience. You give your answer, and then it's crickets. It could be a minute, it could be 2 minutes, and you're thinking, hello, where did you go? They're typing your answer still. So you have to give them a minute to catch up with the process, and just be respectful. You know, I answered the question, this is my supervisory experience, I'm done with it, and say, that's the end of my answer, or I'm done with that question. And then give the team a few minutes to finish typing up the response, and then the next question will be asked of you. You cannot ask for more information regarding an interview question. You can ask it to be repeated. So all the questions are asked of all the candidates in the same way. So every candidate gets all same 10 questions asked in the same manner. If you don't understand the question, you can't say, can you explain that to me? Because we can't. We can repeat it, but that's the most that we can do. So with that said, I have got to the end of the actual presentation. I want to remind you to please sign up for job alerts. Another key takeaway, when those jobs post for 10 days, once they come down, you've missed out. So you want to make sure that you sign up for job alerts. So if you're waiting for that revenue auditor trainee title to come out in the fall, you don't miss it. We will not send you any kind of tax information, any spam. We just send you information about the job postings, and it can be via text or email. And once you're done and you've landed your job at Revenue, you can stop them at any point in time. Questions. I'm assuming that Millie and Brent have been answering those in the chat while I've been visiting. If you do have follow-up, very specific questions, you can email us at rev.idorscareers@illinois.gov, and we will get those answered for you. Again, this presentation will be it is being recorded, and it will be put on our webpage. It takes about a week to follow through. So any general questions that we need to cover with the entire group?
It looks like Brian asked a question about if you're signing up, I think you also mean applying for a new trainee position in a field different from your previous experience. Does it count against you if you provide a resume that highlights that? No. In fact, I believe Julie mentioned in the very beginning, we don't expect you to have any experience for our trainee titles. I know Julie had a breakdown of ages. I think the average age of the trainee was like 38 or 40, somewhere around there. And so many of those new employees don't have any sort of tax experience whatsoever. We expect to train you on all of that.
Great question. Thank you. Scrolling through here to see if there's any others that can apply to everybody on the call tonight. And again, we do these on a monthly basis. If you have a particular topic you would like for us to cover, please let us know that. You can email or put it in the chat. And if we can and we are able and have the resources, we're happy to accommodate. Our jobs are to help people get jobs with the state of Illinois. So educating people, helping them understand how to apply, how to do well in the interview, that's what we're here for. So if there are topics that you are interested in, please let us know.
Brian asked another question about the age. I know you had touched on that too. And I do understand where you're coming from, but no, that information is not looked at. They're only, especially with CMS, when they're validating, they're just looking at your job duties. They're not going to be paying any attention to the years that are there. They're not going to care if you got that in 1999 or you did it in 2019. They're just going to be looking at that the job duties.
And there's a question in here about sending in your college degree. Some positions do require, Brent, did you do that one or somebody do that
I
one
did.
already?
I
Okay,
did
thank
that
you.
one.
Sorry.
For the legal student intern role, would experience be needed for that? As is an intern role, no job experience is needed. The hope is you are enrolled for a legal degree, obviously, but no job experience required.
Okay. And it looks like Tracy asked, the resume advice I gave, does it apply to other jobs? And I think it depends on if it's private industry or public sector. Private industry, very different. 2-page resume, just a summary. Public sector, the state or any federal jobs that you'd applying for, very different. So there's no page limit on that. You want to put all the details on there. So that public sector applies to all state agencies, not just revenue. So any agency that you apply for the state of Illinois, you would want to make sure that you put all that information on there. So I hope that makes sense. Would the age segregation be considered DEI anyways? I'm not sure, Caleb, what you mean by that. I'm not sure what that question is, but I would say the question is there an age limit or requirement? And the answer is no, not at revenue. Some jobs do require, they have age limits across the state. So you would want to check that. And it would most likely be in the job posting if it was necessary, but like you might have to be 16 to work in one of the DHS facilities or Department of Corrections or something like that, but revenue does not. So let's see if there's anything else.
For Brian, regarding the job posting, if the work location is Springfield, you would be expected to be able to work out of the Springfield office. Many of our trainee positions, you are required to report in office full time due to the classroom training that takes place. So, I mean, we don't care if you live 2 hours away, but we expect you to commute those 2 hours into the office then. There is the possibility to transfer, but it would only be when a vacancy opens in one of those regional offices, and we would never be able to guess when that might occur. And then we wouldn't allow you to work out of a different office. If the position's in Springfield and training's in Springfield, you couldn't report to our Chicago office for that.
And Caleb, thank you for explaining. And that's kind of what I thought you meant, but I wasn't for sure. So I do appreciate the clarification. Correct. The state of Illinois will not discriminate you based on your age. It just, we just don't. We don't care.
I was hired as an old man. So they hired.
And I'm way older.
Private sector.
And I'm way older than Brett. So as you can see, no, they do not discriminate based on age. So let's see here. I know I said I include everything, and I did, and I meant everything. And the example was you work someplace for just a week or two or a month or two. Should you put it on there? I think it depends on if it is applicable to the job that you're applying for. So if you are applying to be a mechanic at the state of Illinois garage, then definitely put Jiffy Lube on there because you're going to get experience for it. If there are job skills that you did in that short period of time, maybe you learned an inventory tracking system, or you had great customer service experience working with clients there, or you learned something about a particular engine and that applies to the job you're applying for, then yes. If you're applying for an accounting role and it was just that short 2 or 3 weeks or months and you don't think that there are any job skills that would map on and you don't want to put it on there, then don't put it on there. The idea is that you extract out the job skills and experience that you learned in those jobs and apply it to the jobs that you're applying for. So, and a lot of times some of that's just basic, those soft skills. So maybe it was judgment, maybe it was decision making, maybe it was scheduling. So if it applies to the job, I would say put it on there, even though it was just a short period of time.
A foreign degree can be considered. One of the things that's recommended is to have it evaluated. I have seen transcripts that are in completely foreign languages, and someone at CMS is not going to be able to interpret that. But if you do get them evaluated, there are certain services that can do that. They can give CMS then the equivalent to the degree in the U.S. and what courses those would equate to with U.S. universities.
Thank you, Millie.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we are wrapping up. We're almost at 7:30, so I want to make sure if you have any other burning questions out there that you drop those in the chat for us. Again, we have some great resources on our webpage at tax.illinois.gov, so feel free to go out there and peruse, the information that's out there. And look for our next call will be at the end of May. So hopefully we'll see you on a call again sometime soon. Otherwise, I would say the best of luck to you in your job search and hope you have a terrific evening. So thank you, everyone. Thanks, Millie. Thanks, Brent. Appreciate your time tonight.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.